One of the analogies, and it's also one of the things that's true for me, is this whole series of work has really just been a series of abstract drawings. Granted, typically in abstract drawing, you go and buy a nice piece of paper and maybe a nice fountain pen or just a brush. But for me, the blank sheet of paper is the gallery. So I've got to get an empty space, and my marks are made with the sticks or the sleeves. And so mentally, I still just think of it as a very intuitive drawing process. And so all the other moving parts, all the sort of the travel and the ramp up to an exhibition goes away, because all I'm trying to do is make a complete drawing. Most people, myself included, before I started making art, you're really just familiar with static sculpture or painting or drawings or prints, but the idea that installation work sort of hovers between a sculpture, architecture, permanent, impermanent, it's really easy to know when I just say all I'm doing is making a big drawing in space. I think it's true for me, and it also connects a little bit to the audience, because it's easier than it is what it is, It's a pretty easy explanation. Initially, I had this vision that I really wanted to be a British artist, and I was really in love with a group of British artists who, what they did is they went out into their natural environment, whether that was the streets of London or the countryside, and they would gather found materials, and they would physically construct work just using hand processes like stacking, arranging, sometimes weaving, sometimes attaching to a wall, things like bringing mud from outdoors and then making a drawing. And so I really liked that work. And at first, I misunderstood that, I just need to use those same materials and processes, and it'll be true for me. But when I started working that way, I realized it was not true for me, because my experience was not the city, the objects you found in the streets of London or the idyllic countryside. So instead, I realized my natural environment's a coffee shop. I feel most comfortable there. I feel most inspired there. All those things that they say about nature, I could relate to a coffee shop. So I said, why don't I just take all my materials from there and build that way? And so that was the very first, and they were just simple ideas and small sections. I was just doing them in a studio. When I finally made the bridge into residencies and doing installation work, I just brought forward that idea and that process, and then in time, I no longer have a fixed studio. I just work wherever I'm invited and build the pieces. For me, the process mentally starts from the point that someone contacts me and says, we'd love to bring you to our space to do a piece. Always the second email I send is, can you give me some pictures, floor plan? I need to know something about the space. And that's where it kind of starts. And I'll usually just print those out and pin them up on the wall, or just look at them. Or sometimes I'll just keep the shape of the floor plan and just draw that in a sketchbook. Maybe just that, like if it's a rectangular space, I'll just draw the rectangle corresponding with doors. This had a curve, but it had that corner. So I sort of start with that, and I just sort of know that drawing analogy. The same way I would land a shape in the middle of a print or a drawing, that's the same way I want to land a shape or form in a space. So I usually make it's not a rendering or drawing, it's usually just a gesture, or define the space where it's going to go. This is it. This is what I do. I mean, people make that mistake of like, this must be like your meditation, or this must be your relaxation. It's like, it's not at all. Relaxation, meditation implies some sort of balance, or something you need to get, really passive act or whatever. But this is just the work that I do. If I wanted to relax, I might actually meditate or go to a yoga class or something. But this is just what I do. This is just work for me. It's not... My life is now tied up in this, but it's not like if this goes away, I'm very happy. Like I've far exceeded any of the modest goals I had to begin with. Well, the whole body of work kind of has its own aesthetic that's a little bit, I sometimes use the term, I don't think I invented it, but I like the term systematic abstraction, where sometimes we think of like abstract expressionists just like pulling deep down from their gut and emotionally stabbing at a material. And I more like the fact that a very simple system and process yields something very abstract. So I'm absolutely looking at the idea of kind of basket making, but also organic growth processes, and then ultimately those gesture drawing references. And so all that kind of factors into it, and there's definitely something that runs through the work. But now there's so many previous pieces to draw on. I can kind of remember, oh, I really liked a passage in that one piece. I really liked the way this piece, let's try and mix it up. So that's where the whole drawing series comes from, where it's like, I'm thinking about something I liked from a previous piece but didn't like in a different piece, and I'm going to adjust it. And when I got here, one of the first things I noticed was that basket in the case out front, that burden bag. And that's a bag that you're meant to carry, and I love that it's just been like dropped in that case on its side. All the life has kind of been taken out of it. So I sort of wanted to mimic that gesture in terms of the placement. I think a lot of artists, they work in isolation in a studio. They create a work that'll stand on its own, and they send it out to an exhibition. And I'm completely different. I'm not motivated to exhibit. I would rather just make more work. So that's why I'm constantly just building new pieces for the purpose of exhibition. So that being said, 2012, once I looked at the schedule, I tried to realize that everything was going to sync up. So I started in January with a show that was called Weaving, Stacking, and Staining, because I was somewhere for 2 weeks doing those three processes on said materials. There was another show this summer that was called To Weave, To Stack, To Stain, and now I'm here, I shifted it to the past tense, woven and stacked. And so those actions, those activities, that's what I'm going to do in a space. Certainly the way we read work, we try and break it down. And it's definitely, at the moment, because I'm still building, people see how it's going together, they immediately can discern, like, oh, those go together. But when it's finished and swept up and cleaned up, always the first pass is people take in that it's a large object, and then it's gestalt. Then they start to break it down and realize, oh, these are individual pieces. And then I really like, my favorite sort of viewer is someone who's engaged enough to like go through and be like, well, wait a minute, those are coffee sticks, oh, those are sleeves, or wait, there's no glue, those are just assembled. And I have lots of fun moments at opens where people are like, wait, I thought everything comes from a coffee shop, what are those? And when I explain, like, those are the lids, those are the sleeves, like, just through a simple gesture, it distorts it for them. And even though people have been here and see me working, they'll come in and forget altogether that it was, stir sticks and sleeves. They'll just see a large sculpture in place. And that's at least what I would hope for, as an engaged viewer. It almost becomes more precious because they can't revisit it. So the memories of it or seeing pictures of it, that becomes an even better part of the work, that once it's gone and once it's over, they come back, they're like, oh, that's the place where I saw that thing that time. And I like that aspect too. So it really invested in giving people an experience more so than a tangible object or like, an image to carry with them. So yeah, that's the idea. You make an installation to create an experience in a place. I think that's the other thing I'm trying to articulate is that unlike a lot of artists that their interest is just what they like to make, I'm also really thinking a lot about what I like to experience. So there's a part of me that certainly I enjoy making and creating stuff, but more so there's a much bigger part of me that's an audience member that likes to experience stuff. So I very much make this to satisfy the part of me that likes to go in and experience work. In the last 3 years, I've worked everywhere from commercial galleries to art and music festivals to universities. Everywhere is the same situation. Someone wants to give me a space to make work. There's nothing typical. Before this, I was at an art and music festival, in Cairns, far north Queensland, Australia. Before that, I was at a non-profit art center. Before that, I was at just a contemporary commercial gallery. Before that, a couple universities. Before that, an art center. So it's like, I was at a festival in Seattle. So it doesn't matter. The only thing I care about is this, give me a physical space. I did an empty storefront in Mexico that was an arts council, and a gallery brought me in. So it doesn't matter. The only thing that's typical is that it's an empty space. That's what I want. That's all I desire. I was already making work involving weaving, and I just started transitioning in other materials into that. I was already making work that involved linear sculpture, so then I started making the same linear sculpture with the coffee cup sleeves. And so it was just like I already had work I was making, and still do have work where I sort of shift around. But But yeah, a lot of that is, I think, more the myth of the artist rather than the reality of a working artist is you just work, and work begats more work. Like the reward for working hard is I get to work harder.